James Kaufman, World News Report today, December 27th, 2024. God bless you and yours, no matter where you are in the world. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell for critical future updates. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. Debora Brix on CNN currently, the former White House coronavirus response coordinator, warning the U.S. may be on the brink of another pandemic as bird flu and seasonal flu raise serious concerns. She's afraid that they're going to mix and the receptors to the human flu will mutate and join the bird flu, which is exactly what they claimed happened in Louisiana. They're going to blow this up big, but remember, not one human has died of the bird flu. Thousands of humans die of just the regular flu every year. Comparing the current situation to January 2020, Birx criticizes the CDC for repeating past mistakes and highlights the danger of H5N1 bird flu and human flu co-infections, which could lead to dangerous mutations. Well, I think it already has. Her solution, ramp up testing nationwide. She thinks we have tens of thousands of cases already. Birx stresses the importance of diagnosing illnesses in children to protect vulnerable groups like grandparents and prevent a potential crisis. Again, not one person that we know of has died of the bird flu, but we're about to blow it up.
So far, 65 human cases of bird flu have been reported in the U.S. this year, all contracted by animals. But now we have this new mutation in Louisiana. How worried should we be about bird flu potentially becoming another pandemic?
Well, I love the way you said 63 cases, because I have no idea how many cases there were or are, because our number one principle in preventing pandemics is detect. And if you go to the CDC website, you can see that they're monitoring more than 10,000 exposures, but they've only tested 530. What does that mean? That means we're not testing enough. And we know from other viruses that a lot of the spread can be asymptomatic. So we kind of have our head in the sand about how widespread this is from the zoonotic standpoint, from the animal to human standpoint. Now, also remember, most of those cases described to date happened in the spring and the summer. Not when we had H1N1 circulating right now, when we're running the flu pandemic throughout the United States. So we have rising flu cases, and now we have still zoonotic events coming. So now you're set up for potentially a farm worker getting H5N1, also getting the current flu strain, and reassorting in that individual. To me, that's almost a bigger threat to these mutations happening in individuals over time.
When you say reassorting in that person, what does that mean?
Okay, so the H5 virus, which doesn't adapt too well to our upper respiratory tract and is preventing us from getting infected, but it's infecting cows and pigs and cats and dogs. So our flu, which has the binding sites for us, for our nasal passages. At the same time, we have the zoonotic flu circulating.
And the zoonotic is for
the H1N1, the bird flu, yes.
Okay.
So we have the animal flu, let's call it the animal flu, and now we have human flu co-circulating. And at any time, someone could get both of those unknowingly. And particularly in California, where all the dairy workers now are getting exposed, flu is rising in the south and into California. So we should be monitoring carefully that dual exposure, because if you get both of the flus at the same time, the H5 flu, the bird flu, could get the genes from the human flu and make it infectious to humans in the same way that our current flu is.
And it could become infectious to humans even if it's not coexisting with the human flu, right?
Well, if it mutates...
Again, it's already mutated. They just told you so, i.e. the CDC. I'm smelling a plandemic, but I don't see very many people taking any types of vaccines.
Mutates like it did in this
Yes, like in the
individual,
Louisiana
or in the case in Canada. But that sometimes is a random, slower process.
Okay.
But if you have that co-infection, then you can share genes.
Okay.
And that's a really, to me, the spring and the summer where we had all of the dairy cattle to farm worker exposure, we didn't have human flu circulating. So now we're entering a much more dangerous period, yet we're still not testing. And we should be providing tests free of charge to dairy farm workers so they can test anonymously weekly, because they want to know if they have both cases of potential flus co-circulating in their own body to protect their families. People are very smart. I find the American public to be incredibly smart. If you tell them the risk and you give them the tools, they will utilize them to protect themselves and their family.
So, given this double whammy that you laid out, do you think it's just a matter of time until there's just a full-fledged pandemic here?
Well, certainly we're setting ourselves up for that potential, which, I flash back to January of 2020,
Right.
and I'm hearing the same words come out of the CDC.
Like what?
Low risk and human-to-human transmission. Didn't we hear that from the WHO and the CDC about COVID? So I think our way through this is to use 21st century technology. Remember, it was the private sector that gave us tests within weeks. We went from 20,000 tests to 2 million tests. So if we got the private sector engaged in our response, they would help us get
But most of them were ineffective or fake, right?
tests out to all of the dairy farms, all the poultry farms, where they could test both the chickens and the people exposed to the chickens, and then we would know how far spread this virus was. Right now, we're just looking for symptoms again. We should never be tracking viruses through symptoms. You don't see a virus through its symptoms. You see the virus through the test. And we know from COVID, most of the spread was asymptomatic. If we had been testing in January, as many other countries were, we wouldn't have had the spread that we had. So I'm hoping we learn from...
But it sounds like it doesn't. It sounds like from what you're laying out, you don't think this country has learned from the COVID pandemic.
Our
There's not a sense of urgency right now.
Our agencies are making the same mistakes they made with COVID. The number 2 principle of pandemic is detect. And the only way to detect for viruses is to test. You cannot see a virus through symptoms. You miss so many cases. Yet we're still talking about flu-like illness. Well, there is no flu-like illness. There's RSV, respiratory syncytial virus that causes croup. Parents know what that is. There's mycoplasma pneumonia circulating right now. There's flu circulating right now, and soon there'll be COVID circulating. Those are all coughy respiratory illnesses that look the same. We should not be tracking illnesses by symptoms. We should track them only by testing so that parents know whether their child has RSV or flu so they can protect their grandparents. And their grandparents can know whether they have RSV or flu or COVID, because flu and COVID are treatable. So we need diagnostic tests out there. And I know if CMS tomorrow said, you know what, we're not going to pay for that doctor's visit unless you have a definitive diagnosis, we have better respiratory tests within 4 weeks.
Everyone knows what happens if you start using the testing kits they provide. Good luck, folks. It sounds like they're going to push us into a war and a pandemic all before Trump can get into office. God bless you and yours. Share, subscribe, and always remember, anything's possible in Bizarro World.